नज़्म अली शान, शाद रहे पाकिस्तान।
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Assalamu alaikum, and a very happy 75th Independence Day to all of you watching, whether in Pakistan or across the globe. Pakistan, of course, is celebrating 75 years since it got its independence in 1947. Today is 2022, hence, of course, 75 years have gone by. This jubilee is being celebrated all across the country with different festivities that have already happened and are happening as we speak. There is this aura of togetherness, of community, that is becoming more and more active with time, and I think it's very important in the whole scenario that we are seeing across the world. It's very important for Pakistan to understand, for Pakistanis to understand what Pakistaniyat is all about. What is the philosophy behind Pakistan? Why was Pakistan made independent? For which reason were the people, the Muslims of the subcontinent, united together in this nation that we call the Islamic Republic of Pakistan? There are a whole lot of reasons behind this. A lot of our previous generations have laid down their lives so that we in this generation can live in peace and harmony with all our families and friends and our acquaintances. Today we celebrate this 75th Independence Day with a lot of zeal, a lot of fervor, but with a lot of responsibility as well. There's a lot of responsibility on all the different generations, especially on the youth of Pakistan, because they are the harbingers of the future generation and they are in majority in Pakistan. So of course we look forward to the youth of Pakistan to further build, construct and strengthen our country. We have been joined by two interesting guests in this show, and both belong to the female gender. I'd like to begin this with a quote by Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who said there are two important powers in the world. One is the sword, the other is the pen. There is a power even more stronger than these two, and that is the power of the woman. And that is why we thought in this show we'll have with us two women who represent different facets of our society and are working not only to further strengthen our society, but also to make a mark for Pakistan across the world, to make the world understand how important Pakistan is, not only politically but also culturally, but also traditionally. These two guests, let me introduce them to you one by one. On my very right is Komal Salman. She's founder of Folkloristan. Komal, thank you very much to have joined us. And our second guest is Fatima Lodhi. She's founder of Dark is Divine. Thank you very much to the both of you, and I'm seeing the both of you after a very long time. So first of all, Jashn-e-Azadi Mubarak, happy Independence Day to you, and of course to all of you who are also listening. What is the basic feeling that comes to you whenever 14th of August comes? Let's begin with you, Komal.
Thank you for having me. 14th of August is a lot of mixed feelings, because while you feel sad that you're stuck in this rut and there's a lot of things going wrong, there's also a lot of hope. And because my paternal grandparents, they migrated, and my late grandfather, he lost two of his siblings on the way. So it's always been a day very close to our hearts.
Have your grandparents told you about the stories behind the migration when the independence was happening and how they struggled to create Pakistan?
They did, but you know, like as I personally grew older, you start realizing that it pains them to talk about it. So like I eventually stopped asking.
So you basically do avoid talking to them about it.
Yeah, so like jitni baatein unhone khud bata di thi.
All right.
That was it.
Is there some kind of responsibility on you? Do you feel responsible enough as a woman and as a member of the youth of Pakistan that you represent to strengthen and to correct the lacunas as you talked about in the very beginning?
I think that responsibility falls on all of us, because when you're born in a country, that is your identity, and to make your identity one you're proud of is everyone's responsibility.
All right, it's everyone's responsibility. Fatima, how responsible do you feel? When I had talked to you last time, you were working for Dark is Divine, and you'd done a lot of many important things as far as, you know, highlighting the issue of women and highlighting the issue of women of color is concerned. How has that struggle been for you as a woman? And today when you represent women of a certain color, let's put it very bluntly, in a country like Pakistan. Do you feel that all those years of struggle that you have put into have bore fruit?
Thank you for having me, and it's amazing here, sitting right in front of you, of course, and happy Independence Day to both of you. Again, talking about Dark is Divine, it has never been a piece of cake for me. It has been a bumpy ride, I would say, because when I started back in 2013, I faced a lot of opposition, and if I look back, and now it's 2022, I'm still working on the same cause and trying to bring a change, and I've seen a huge change, I would say, because people have started accepting that there is discrimination in Pakistan, although we are an independent nation, but still we are in the shackles of colorism, which is color discrimination. So if I go back, then it's again, we were under British Raj, we were colonized, and we still have the germs of colonization today in Pakistan. So yeah, trying to fight that, and when it comes to changing the mindset, it will definitely take at least a generation long effort.
But how has the reaction been as far as your struggle is concerned, as a woman and struggling for other women?
Again, it was never easy, because people thought maybe she's doing it to gain sympathy, because nobody talks about this issue, because it's a very touchy topic, you know, when talking about someone's appearance, how somebody looks. So again, I have support of women now. They do want to talk about this issue. They do want to come up and talk about how they have been discriminated on the basis of something they were born with. So I think I consider it a success now, because when people come up to me and they talk about their issues, and now they want to join the cause and bring a change in the society. So,
when you talk of changing the society, every year you see and hear stories. We are in 2022, we got independent in 1947. Looking back at your struggle, looking back at the struggle of so many other women, what does 14th of August in 2022 represent for you?
I think we're still struggling, I would say. You know, if I talk about women especially, you know, that's why we have many feminists out there. They're trying to fight for their rights, for equality. You know, I'm not talking about equity, but equality.
All right.
You know, basic rights for the women out there. There's so many women out there, they don't even know about the basic rights.
True.
You know, what their basic rights are. And I think their families enjoy that they don't know it, because once they know it, they would definitely, you know, stand up or speak up or start voicing their you know, problems that they face every day.
And when they know that they have rights, it is then that a lot of people are afraid that once they get to know their true rights, that they would not be able to maybe subvert them, or not be able to, you know, give, not control them the way they have been doing. And this is not just relevant to Pakistan, but it is relevant to our region entirely.
South Asian
and I
region
think this is a mentality that needs to change, and I'm so happy that people like the both of you are changing that mentality. We've been joined online by a third woman who's also changing the whole perspective of women in society as well. She's a journalist. She also works for her own organization. She is Maliha, Safiaullah. Maliha, thank you very much to have joined us. Maliha, we were talking of equality. In this day and age in 2022, we are the 14th of August. 75 years have passed since our independence. How independent are women in this day and age, and how has the struggle been for the women of Pakistan, from Fatima Jinnah Sahiba to Begum Waqarunisa Noon to Benazir Bhutto Sahiba, and so on and so forth. We have so many examples. Malala. How do you feel has the struggle been, because you have been part of that struggle as well?
Omar, thank you for having me, and it's an absolute honor to be joining today and representing a faction that, as you just pointed out, needs that kind of voice. And thank you to you for giving us a platform to talk about this today. Omar, honestly speaking, I think there's been so much progress, and I feel like so much is happening on the front. On this front, I mean, people are stepping out, people are understanding. It's not just the women who are identifying the rights, it's men who are identifying the rights. And it hasn't been an easy journey for anyone, but they've been, like, as you pointed out, like Fatima Jinnah, like Malala, they have struggled and been able to provide us with a platform to do something, to, you know, they were the forerunners in this, and we're just following suit. And It's commendable, you know, the people you have, or these remarkable women you have with you in studio. It was wonderful listening to their story right now. So I personally think that there's a lot of hope. I feel like we have Pakistani astronauts, we have, aerophysicists, we have somebody like Amna Beg, who's in the police, and she's doing so much. We have a wonderful cricket team that's doing so well. So, you know, I feel like we're breaking the barrier. We are changing the narrative one year, you know, every single day, honestly speaking. So it's just these tiny, small steps that we're taking. So I feel like there is progress.
How important has the struggle been on a personal front for you to represent, you start your organization, and as a journalist as well? What do you see around you? What have the changes that have occurred as far as the women gender is concerned in the last decade or so? And in your point of view, what more needs to be done?
Omar, honestly speaking, I'm going to be a hypocrite if I say that I had to struggle a lot, because my father was a journalist, and I had a sort of an easy break there. And even as a woman, I felt like I had that layer of protection there coming from him. And I've had a lot of support, honestly speaking. But having said that, you know, they've been these extra precautions that were always necessary in our society, being a woman. The way that you dress up, the way that you speak, and how much you can smile and interact with somebody, what, you know, what you're saying, how it could be misinterpreted, you know. So these are things that we have to go through, we are conditioned to go through since childhood. So at a personal level, I feel like every girl, you know, growing up in our society in South Asia has this kind of training where the mother or the society at large trains you to behave a certain way in society when you're interacting, when you're a journalist, when you're doing something that is, because I started working when I was 16 and I was working as a foreign correspondent. So my interaction with the foreign media and going to places like Char Sadda and trying to understand different perspectives of women over there. I had to wear a hijab where I had to go through the backward areas. There was struggle there, but I never saw that as a struggle personally, because I saw that as an opportunity. Because if I'm doing it, somebody else would take, they would want to do it too. When I started my own company, the struggle at that time was that I had a baby at that time. So becoming a mom and working as in my company and starting from scratch in a very male-dominated society and industry, there was a lot of I don't know the exact word for it. There was, I think, mistrust for a mom to be working with a child, because they always thought that I won't be able to deliver. That was always a concern, that, oh, maybe this is somebody else is equipped to do it better than you. And so I had to put in an extra effort. And I feel like if we normalize women working, we normalize a mom taking her kid to work, I feel like that is something that really needs to happen. I think a lot of things need to be normalized, and we shouldn't be, limited to a certain role or limited to a certain title.
That's a very important point, Maliha, and I'm going to take this point with Fatima, because Fatima, normalizing, this is something that you relate to very much. Normalizing women, you yourself are a mom, Maliha is a mom, you yourself are a mom to two lovely kids. How difficult is it? Because I don't think this is really related to Pakistan alone. I think this is related to this region as well. There's a lot of question marks when it comes to working women who are moms as well. And I've known so many who, balance it out brilliantly. Why still in this day and age are there so many queries regarding women working and managing their households?
I'm doing that basically.
I know, that's why I asked you the question after Maliha.
I do all the house chores, everything, and I also manage the kids, and I also go to the job and everything. So, there's this extra, I would say, responsibility on us that we have to prove ourselves. Because if I want to go out, I want to work, I need to make sure, I need to tell everyone, with my actions and everything, that yes, I'm going to take good care of my kids as well. So there's this extra, responsibility, and I'm trying to break those barriers and all the taboos out there. because I think you can be an amazing mom, you can also go out and work and make a good career.
True.
And I think lots of mothers are doing that, and I believe I'm one of them. And I think we can change the narrative.
But hasn't the narrative already changed in these last few years? I've seen so many women entering fields that I had never seen beforehand. In the services sector, we see more and more women joining. In other sector, we see people managing their own organizations. We have 3 women who are managing their own organizations here, in 2 in the studios, 1 online. This is proof itself that change has already come. But of course, there are obstacles in every society, in every nation. In the West also, women battle a lot of issues, and here also. But coming to the importance of women as part of a society, of a nation that is Pakistan. In this day and age, I'll refer this question to the youngest of the lot, and that is Komal. How much of that relatability, that love, that passion for Pakistan is there amongst the youth of Pakistan?
I think recently, with everything going on, my generation has become more politically aware than any other generation before us was at this age, because kids as young as 15, 16 and this age bracket when you're just out of university, all of these people, they have very strong opinions and they have very grounded opinions. It's not like they've just made
but
opinions.
All these
out of
opinions are
nothing.
based on facts and figures. Or do you feel that they are influenced very easily? As far
I
as
think
the youth is
emotions
concerned?
do run very, very high at this age. Even personally speaking, I have experienced that, but I think this is an age where you just keep learning and learning, and every year you realize that you're a completely different person.
But
than you were
what
last
is
year.
very interesting is that when you study, in whichever grade you are studying, you study Pakistan studies, and you go through the whole constitution, you go through how Pakistan was made independent and the struggles of the people. At that phase, you are learning. But that learning, when does that translate into actually understanding the whole concept of Pakistan as a nation?
I think that translates when you start realizing that there is a difference in between gaining information and gaining knowledge, and that's something you have to do for yourselves, because unfortunately our education system is not at that level yet where it teaches you that and it sort of inculcates that within you. So to get information and then to interpret it is all up to you. So
All right.
yeah.
To get education and to be informed, all of this interpretation is up to you. Maliha, if you're still with us, I'd like to have your point of view as far as information and Pakistan, and of course the relatability to our country as a nation that we belong to is concerned. Do people, when you talk to people around you and you interact with a lot of people through your organization and as a journalist as well, what is their opinion of Pakistan, and what is their relatability or their, how should I say, their attraction to Pakistan as a citizen of that country? Do you feel they adhere to it? Do you feel they are more inclined to moving towards another country, or is there still some element of what I'd call Pakistaniyat in them?
Omar, so okay, your question, I cannot really you cannot just define it for an entire nation. What you're asking essentially is, I think it's at a very
I said really
personal
what
level.
you feel through the people you talk to. What is your personal
Okay.
experience?
Okay, so my personal experience on this is that it's a very varied opinion of people. So when there's a lot of instability in the country, people, as I think, being Pakistani, you're inclined to be extremely emotional rather than being rational. So when there's instability, people are looking, they're immediately blaming everyone and thinking and finding a way out. But when otherwise, when things are more stable, and especially on 14th August or days leading up to 14th August, you feel that Pakistani. There's this entire, everyone is so driven and everyone is feeling that Pakistani that you're speaking about. But when you're talking about journalists, or when you're talking about people that I interact with internationally, I feel like with all the tourism and with social media, I really feel like the narrative has changed. I really feel like Pakistan's being looked at in a very different light now, over the last decade. I feel like, there's so much being promoted in Pakistan, which highlights the positivities rather than the negativities. And I feel like a lot of problem is coming from the local media, essentially, which is not taking the responsibility of building a narrative that highlights that positivity. But if you were to look at the bloggers or vloggers or people who are narrative builders on social media, on different social media platforms, I feel like the narrative, it literally translates into what we believe is Pakistaniyat. So that is essentially what I feel is like. It's a varied opinion, Umar, to be honest. But if you were to look at, it depends on what you're looking at and who you're interacting with.
That is so true, Maliha, which brings me to the fact that, when it comes to the 14th of August, we've got a lot of people who are on the streets with the huge flag. We've got all the different videos on Instagram, on Facebook, on all the different other social media platforms with the flags laying high, with different, quotations. I myself did that this afternoon on my Facebook account, and I'm sure a lot of you have done that as well. Yesterday, you were with your family, witnessing the fireworks on the eve of Pakistan's Independence Day. And today also on the street, we see a lot of people with the flags held high, with a lot of, these sounds, with their Pakistan Zindabads echoing throughout the streets. Is this a sentiment that is relegated to just the 14th of August, or do you feel that we are slowly realizing that Pakistan is a country that is extremely important to us and we need to do our level best to make it a stronger state?
Omar, again, this is very subjective. For me, I feel like this is more of a tradition now that, because this is a tradition that I've had for a very long time. My best friend and I used to get in the car, and the whole day we used to listen to all the Mili Nagmas, and we used to sing them along, and that was our thing, dress up in green and white. I do that with my son now. I dress him up in green and white and, do the whole flag bit with him. But honestly speaking, I feel like the practical aspect of actually working towards building this country, I feel like we're losing that kind of motivation. We have delegated that responsibility to people in power, and we feel like that's our entire part, that all we have to do is support a certain person or a certain party, and they will do all the cleaning, they will fix up Pakistan. And on an individual level, we're just thinking that that's all that we really need to do. We're not actually doing our part. Komal just mentioned education, that if you were to look at the Pakistan studies books, they're not actually telling you what Pakistaniyat is, or how you can benefit the country. It's just broken down into geography and history, which hasn't been updated in a very long time. So as she pointed out, that you really need to educate your own self. So where do these children turn to? What do they turn to? Where would they get the idea to actually benefit society? I think that entire thing is missing. That middle ground is not there. That middle person isn't there to educate them in the right direction. So again, it's very subjective on how somebody is working towards this country, or if they're working for it at all.
All right, excellent. I think this is a very good perception, I feel, as a woman and as somebody who interacts with a lot of people, on what Pakistan is actually going through and what needs to be done, because there are a lot of things that need to be done. As you yourself said, it's not one government's responsibility, it's a collective responsibility of everybody, including myself, yourself, these two who are here with me as well, and all the people who are listening. And you cannot just delegate, and I totally get what you're trying to say. You cannot just delegate it to the government and say, you're going to make everything all right. Everything needs to be made right by everybody. Until and unless you yourself don't start it with your own initiative, you cannot, point the finger at somebody else and say, I am standing here like this, but you need to do the right thing. We all need to, point fingers at ourselves as to how and what we are contributing towards our country, and that is how we can make that change. Which brings me to Fatima. You've been, championing this change for women of color. This is also another taboo in this whole region. Women of a certain color, if they're dark, they're not as attractive as they should be, or for marriage proposals, there's a lot of issues. Are those taboos also changing? 75 years after Pakistan's independence, do you feel that the new generation also understands that genders are subjective, and genders need to be catered to, need to be respected the way they are in other parts of the world?
First of all, we need to make people understand the essence of Pakistan. You know, it was based on diversity. You know, if you move from Karachi to Kashmir, you'll get to see such beautiful skin tones, you know,
True.
every kind of body type, body shapes. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to homogenize it, that everybody looks the same. So just imagine if I enter this room and I'm wearing green color, so I would, you know, somehow camouflage with the background.
Of course.
So that's what we're trying to do to Pakistan, you know, that everybody should become fair-skinned. So what I'm trying to do is, sorry, it's a little bit
No, please
different
go
now.
ahead.
So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to tell people that they need to be comfortable in their own skins, you know. You don't have to look a certain way to be called beautiful. So trying to change that narrative, and you know, fair skin, as you just said, that being dark skinned, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to, you know, I'm talking about this issue since 2013, and on a daily basis, I keep on saying the same thing. I wouldn't get tired until unless I bring a change.
No, please. I think we need to talk. We need to move ahead in the right direction till change comes. And you know, change cannot come just in a day, on a day's notice. Change is gradual, but change comes with constant deliberation, constant struggle. It's not, you know, it doesn't happen overnight.
Overnight, no, because it's such a deep-rooted issue. Because I just told you that when we colonized, we thought white is might, and you know, the fair skin is superior. Fair skin
This is
people
an
are
effect
superior.
of colonization that I completely agree with.
Yeah,
you on
it is, and the germs are still there. You know, we're still practicing it. So I'm trying to change that through media, through people like you, you know, taking positive messages that how we can bring a change. We have to change the definition of beauty, that fair skin is not the ambassador of beauty. You know, we have to change that. And these advertisements that are there 24/7, I am not against the products, but I'm against the way they're being marketed. You know, they tell you that you are of a wrong skin tone, and they play with the emotions of girls and boys out there. It's not just limited to the girls now. There are boys also part of the fairness marathon.
You know, and this whole is, I think, somehow related to self-respect.
Yes.
People feel that if you gain a certain color tone, you become, people respect you more. I don't think that is the case. I think self-respect, you need to respect yourself first. And until and unless you do not respect yourself, nobody else will respect you. I've seen that as an example with so many other people. And I think all of that needs to be understood by the youth, by everybody.
Self-acceptance is very important. Self-acceptance, self-love. And please not tell people that, you know, there's something wrong with them.
True.
Because everybody is born, you know, differently. And I think that's the
qualities
beauty.
that are attributed to them and them alone.
And we need to learn to celebrate diversity, you know, and celebrate diversity and also respect differences
that
we have.
That is so. Celebrating diversity, we should also celebrate culture, we should also celebrate traditions and our folk stories and our folk histories. And that is where you come in, Komen. Your organization, Folkloristan, is, of course, taking out those elements of folk stories that have still not been translated into the English language, and you move ahead so that other people who do not understand the Urdu language or the Punjabi or the Sindhi language can read through them, can see how rich our culture is. Is it a difficult task for you? Does it come naturally to you?
So initially it was very difficult because collecting all of those stories was quite a task, even though I must say social media has been very helpful. I noticed this thing about people that they want to help preserve culture, and there is an appetite for it. People just don't know what to do about it.
All right. And why is that so in your point of view? Why don't people know what to do about it? Isn't Pakistan enshrined in different cultures? Every province has a very distinct culture, traditions and heritage.
I think the reason is that whilst we're a very resilient nation, we're not a happy nation per se. And when resilience comes when you're hopping from one crisis to the next. And when you're in a state of crisis, naturally creativity takes a backseat. So I think that's not exactly our fault. It's nobody's fault. And also because
it's a phase of transition, and we are changing, we are evolving, we are getting better, we are getting stronger. And with that, we need to also, you know, strengthen ourselves culturally, because I think a lot of people, especially the youth, don't know so many of the folk stories that our culture and our traditions are associated with.
Rapid urbanization has been one of the factors in killing our storytelling culture. And then there's also the fact that people can't read each other's languages. And so it's also why I made Folkloristan a multilingual platform. I work in most major local languages, and I'm also going to be expanding into international languages soon.
That is wonderful.
So yeah, and also I've noticed that in terms of visual imagery, Pakistan really lacks in the space. Not just photographs, also in terms of illustrations and graphic design. Now, lately, there are a lot of amazing people coming out there who've started putting out their work. But if you like go Google anything, it's really hard to find references. That means in an age of everything being audio-visual.
And narrative building, that's so important.
Definitely. It's very hard for your children to imagine just by listening to it because they're so used to seeing everything. So I think it's very important to make visuals for everything.
Interpretation of whatever, maybe even for the folk stories that you are translating, there needs to be a visual interpretation.
Yeah, I illustrate all of them. And speaking of narrative building, I think folklore is such an important window into culture because there are so many traditional games of ours mentioned in these stories. There are so many cultural values mentioned in these stories. And I think it's very important to uphold these things, from everything, how you treat food, how you associate food, how you respect people around you, what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do. I think stories are very important in that aspect.
Because even as a kid, when you grow up, I think these stories mold you into either a better person or a worse person. I mean, you know, it all depends on what you see, how you perceive it, how you are made to perceive it as a kid. The first few years of your life are extremely important, and if you are given the right narrative, the right visual imagery, and the right cultural interpretations of what our country stands for, you will grow up to be somebody who loves the country. And it could be completely the opposite as well. If you're not given the right, you know, chances or the right ways and means to correctly see what Pakistan stands for. I think that is very important. Visual imagery, as you pointed out, is extremely important for Pakistan's narrative building. Maliha, narrative building and Pakistan. As a journalist, how important is it in this day and age for a country such as Pakistan? A lot of people abroad, when they think of Pakistan, the first few aspects of Pakistan are not that positive. Whenever anybody has come to Pakistan, I've talked to scores of diplomats, they say what I had been told in X, Y or Z country is completely opposite to what I see when I come to Pakistan, and I have become in love with Pakistan. I have seen, and I am not joking, Maliha, people, diplomats, ambassadors crying when they are leaving Pakistan because they say they have received such a lot of love from the people of Pakistan and that they have fallen in love with the country. They don't want to leave the country. How important is to tell the world how much love is present in the people and the places of Pakistan?
Omar, I think it's absolutely necessary. As you pointed out, my bureau chief used to be in India, and he was my Australia when I was working for Channel 9. He used to visit Pakistan, and he was the South Asia bureau chief, and he used to, you know, he was working with when the Afghan war took place, and, you know, I was working with him at that time. And he got married around that time, and we decided to do a little bit of a ceremony at our own place for him while he was here. And he and his wife wept. They properly wept at that time because they were so blown away that they're like, even our family did not extend this kind of love to us. So I know exactly what you mean when you say that, you know, diplomats cry when they're leaving. So I feel like this is our responsibility, Omar, even yours, you know, because you're the one dealing with diplomats on a more regular basis. These stories need to go out, you know, these stories of how we are and who we are, because the platform that you have, the platform that a lot of people have nowadays because of social media, it's such a powerful tool. It's such a way, you need to select the stories that you put out. Unfortunately, we're so fixated on the instability, on what's gone wrong, and I don't see us promoting our women heroes or even, you know, male heroes. We're not projecting the right kind of stories. I don't know who is picking out stories that need to go out. So I really feel like the narrative needs to go out, and it's essential because this is where the transformation is going to come. In 75 years, we have successfully destroyed the image of Pakistan in a way that, people are reluctant to come here. Our passport ranks as the second worst passport in the world. So do we really need, and we don't deserve that, honestly speaking, because
Of
we're a
course,
resilient,
because our
loving
country,
country.
it is one of those who really does not deserve, apart from other countries whose narrative building is so strong, but in fact when you go to their countries, the reality of that country is totally the opposite. And in our case, we need to really build on that. How important do you feel is the role of visual imagery, or maybe telling about stories? Like I was talking to Komal, we have got such a strong culture, traditions, heritage, folk stories, folk singers, artists, musicians, and so on and so forth. We need to highlight them more and more. Whose responsibility is it? Is it of journalists like yourself, myself? Is it of people like Komal, or maybe the Fatima, or is it the responsibility of much more people and more diversified members of our society as well?
Omar, I think it's everyone's responsibility. We're all using social media. Everyone's on TikTok now. Everyone's using Instagram. Everyone has public profiles. It's so easy now. You don't have to go through the trouble of looking for a job in media. You have media on your fingertips. You can tell a story, and visual, as it was just pointed out, visual imagery, because we don't have, Instagram has done this to us, 14 seconds of story, and that is it. That is our attention span. We start clicking if it's too much, if it's an entire novel up there. So we need 14 seconds. You put out a story which is positive, see people resharing it, select the right words, put it across. Why wouldn't it get, publicized? You remember how, Humans of New York became such a big thing at one point in time, because they were real people, they were real stories, they were motivational stories, people were listening in. Why can't we do that with us, but not like in a lengthy sort of a way, minimize it, animate it, do it in 14 seconds. We step out, we go on the street, we'll find somebody who has a story to tell, and it doesn't have to be a sad story. The worst part is that, our people who have the platform to do it, they're so fixated on sympathy building for Pakistanis that nobody actually sees the happy side. Nobody actually sees the achievement.
But that brings me to an important question as a journalist, Maliha. The fact is, why are we harboring so much on the negativity, on the criticism?
Because
we have so many stories of people who have gone up and beyond their respective mandate and done so much for themselves, for the people around them, for the country. Why don't we highlight that? We don't see much. Go to any social media platform, whether it be Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, the most of the content that you see is criticism of X, Y, or Z. Let's not go into that, but why is there so much of negativity within us?
Omar, it's not just what the content's going out. If you notice the comments below those posts, below that content, it's like everyone is so cynical and critical, and everyone wants to pull somebody else down. And even if there's a sympathy post, people are questioning if this is true or false. We've become so cynical, and that is why I feel like it's even more necessary to repeatedly tell positive stories, to reset the mindset, reset it into a very positive way, because I feel like we're so tuned into being negative even as people now because of what is being projected. If you are listening to toxic or negative commentary 24/7, you open your phone, you're watching TV, everywhere, if there's negativity, you automatically become a very negative, cynical person. And I feel like that's what's happened to Pakistan, and that is what is hindering our growth.
And that is what needs to change, and that is what needs to change radically. 75 years after our independence, we need to harbor on all that is positive, on all that is good in our country, and we need to highlight and project that at the most. And the negativity should remain. I mean, I can't say that we need to completely eliminate that. That needs to remain so that we understand what's not right with our country. But we cannot highlight, we should not highlight only the wrong things that are happening in our country. There's so much of good in our country. There's so much of positivity in our country, but that is not being highlighted as it needs to be. Last questions to the three of you, very quick answers, beginning with you, Fatima. 75 years we've become independent. After 75 years, we still see a lot of question marks amongst the youth, a lot of question marks amongst the women, a lot of question marks amongst the men and of all genders. I see my parents and other people of that generation being very skeptical of all the sacrifices that they rendered to Pakistan, and when they see what Pakistan is moving towards right now with all the negativity, that depresses them a lot. And I'm not just talking of one person, I've talked to many people of that generation, and they are all unanimous in that point of view, that they did not create Pakistan for it to be embroiled in so much negativity now, when there is so much of good in our country that needs to be highlighted. And harbored. What needs to be done? If I had to ask you 3 important things that need to be done, 75 years of our independence, what should those 3 things be?
I think freedom of speech, which is there, but still,
with responsibility.
Yeah, responsibility. Okay? Celebrating diversity. It has to be on top. And again, respecting differences.
All right. What about you, Komal? What are the 3 things that come to your mind on the 75th Independence Day of Pakistan that we need to do in order for the world to understand what Pakistan stands for, and how can we curtail all this, criticism and negativity that has engulfed our society?
I think first off, we need to start to learn to be comfortable in our own selves and not fall into a cultural inferiority complex. Represent yourself not just on Web 2, Web 3 is a massive space, especially NFTs. Go for it. Do anything you can do. 2, like Fatima said, inclusivity. It's very, very important. And 3, if you have a privilege, understand that you also have responsibility to use that privilege to not only benefit yourself, but also to benefit other people who don't have that privilege.
All right. Finally, Maliha, 3 points very quickly. What are the 3 things that need to happen to Pakistan 75 years after its independence in order for the world to change its perspective on our country?
I think the first thing that's really important is reforming the education system entirely. I think that we need to update it. It needs to inculcate thought and idea in a way that actually nourishes and nurtures the youth. The second most important thing is investing your energies in actually doing something concrete for the country, rather than delegating responsibility to a political figure or political party and holding them hostage under that they are supposed to do something. And the third thing is saying the right thing, projecting the right thing on your social media, and trying to refrain from being toxic in your own energy. I think these 3 things would really benefit the country.
Thank you so very much, Maliha, Safiaullah, and thank you very much to my 2 guests here, Fatima, Lodhi and Komal Salman, to have joined us. 3 different women from 3 different fields, and all of them owning their own organizations. I think 75 years after our independence, we couldn't be happier seeing the women come in onto their own in different parts of our society as different leaders in different members of our society and organizations that represent different aspects of what our country stands for. 75 years since we got independent, we need to rethink our strategy as to how the country needs to move forward in a positive way, in a way that includes all the genders and sects of our country, and moving collectively. Promote positivity, promote harmony rather than negativity. I'll end our show with this quote by our Qaid Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who said, "My message to all of you is that of hope, courage and confidence. Have these and you'll see how our country will change in the next few years." Pakistan Zindabad.
अज़्म आली शान, शाद रहे पाकिस्तान।